This is The Toss-Up, where an expert line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention. It's all right here on The Toss-Up. At this time last year, the IU men's soccer team had won 5 of their first 6 games, with their only loss coming to a top 5 team in the nation in double overtime. And just figured I'd warn you now, this isn't the only time you'll hear us talk about overtime today. But after only 3 weeks of play last season, the Hoosiers had already defeated 4 ranked teams and were well on their way to a Big Ten title and a strong College Cup run. Now, this team has trailed in every game this year except for the one in which no one scored. They have yet to pick up a win in regulation, and the hardest part of their schedule is yet to come. But here's the weird thing. Through all this chaos and all these extra periods and what many perceive as underperforming, this team is still undefeated. They haven't lost a game yet and are still ranked in the top 5 in the nation. So, what to make of this wacky start to the 2019 campaign? We've got it all covered right here on The Toss-Up. Hello everybody and welcome to the show. I'm your host Drew Fry and I'm here with a wonderful panel of men's soccer guests. We have Maxwell Glenn from iOS TV Sports, Jordan Gould from BTN Plus, and Tamar Scher as well from BTN Plus. So thank you all for coming to the show, and we'll get started with it. We're going to start at the very beginning. That Pitt game went to double overtime. IU ended up winning it, but the team had to erase a 2-0 deficit at half, and it scared a lot of fans. Max, I'm going to start with you. Do fans have a right to be scared after some sort of performance like that?
Well, I think they do have a right. I mean, we have to acknowledge, though, how young this team is and new. It's early in the season. They're working out the kinks. And I think that they have a right to be nervous, but I don't think that they should be too alarmed. I think that there's a lot of time for this to change. But what's really the takeaway I look at when I see that is that they've still been able to come back from those deficits. And while they have had a little bit of an issue, they've been able to capitalize, especially in the second half. So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I'm thinking right now it's early, and what they've shown looks promising once they get their plan together.
Yeah, Pittsburgh really just kind of caught IU off guard just to really start their season off. I mean, Edward Kiza just led the ACC in goals last year with 15, was 4th in the nation, I believe, in goals last season. He came out firing, and they really struggled to defend him early on. I mean, you look at the roster they put out there, 10 of the 11 starters from last season, not on the roster this year. Jack Mayer being the only guy coming back. So they're a young team, but Todd Yeagley believes that, this is not really should phase them. It shouldn't, because it's kind of like IU soccer doesn't rebuild, they reload. And that's kind of what Yeagley preaches. And, I don't think there's a reason to alarm. And even after that Pittsburgh game, I remember he said at the media day the following week that, this team showed progress and seemed to be further along than they were kind of a month ahead of schedule, he said, than maybe the team was last season. So that's definitely a positive sign for IU soccer fans.
Absolutely not. Fans should not be scared yet. We are so early in the season, like you were saying. This team is so young. They still have to get their momentum, and there's so much depth to this team that I don't think we've even seen the potential that they have. So back to what you were saying, Yeagley said in media availability that they've come so far. This isn't unique in soccer that there's this turnaround of events with 14 newcomers. We shouldn't be scared yet, but there's still so much to come.
And Tamar, you touch on all those fresh faces, so I'll send it right back to you and we can go back around. But with all of these new guys on the team, what's different about this group other than the players, obviously, but where does Coach Yeagley have to go with this specific group of young guys?
So I think there's a lot of intensity going on. We saw in the Pitt game, Aiden Morris got a little riled up, got that yellow card in there. So there's still a lot of intensity. I think the freshmen may not know necessarily where their place is because of that depth that I was talking about. So you got Aiden Morris, you got Victor that just performed. They produced, they're already on that starting lineup. And so to really see it follow through and see these fresh faces come into their own is going to be really important, but there's so much potential.
Yeah, you look at Josh Penn, a guy who's leading the team in shots so far this year. I mean, he's only found the back of the net once, but the season's still young. Tomorrow you bring up Victor Becerra, who really just kind of shown early on this season in that IU Adidas Credit Union Classic and opening weekend in Bloomington. So they have some young guys who have really just kind of lit it up early on. Aiden Morris, another guy who, in that Pitt game, I mean, it was a tale of two halves for him. It saw some freshmen and maybe some nerves from some of those freshmen, but they really provided the production that this team needed later on in that game. UCLA, you look at that game as well. And then the Denver win, their other win on the season, Ian Black just showed out, and we'll touch on him in a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I think just the way that, there's a new team. They have a new way of playing. I think that's what fans might have to get used to, especially with these first few games. It's just a new team. We just got to get the pieces figured out together, and then it's just going to keep building from here. And just really keeping that championship mentality is going to be huge, because all these guys came in with that mindset, and holding them to that high standard, they can all reach that. And I think that once they just kind of settle in, there were a lot of nerves like Coach Yeagley talked about. I think once they can kind of settle into their spots, they'll be looking good.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's safe to say that last year was a championship caliber team, and now this year with an entirely new group. Max, how do you, if you're in Coach Yeagley's shoes, how do you try and manage not only that new team but also expectations?
Yeah, like I was saying, mainly it's hard to, when you have a team that has performed so well, you don't want to put too much pressure on them, but you also don't want to give them a break. So he has to make sure he's holding them to those standards, but just not overwhelm them, because you have to take into account the learning curve. And these guys are playing at a very high level. Aiden Morris is already starting, looking great. And so these guys, they're adjusting pretty quick. But I think just kind of easing them into it, but keeping those high standards is going to be the key.
Yeah, IU, this is not a program that's seen a lot of losses in recent years. I mean, you look 2 years ago, they won 20 games, right? And their only loss of the season came in the title game, right? Last year, you look at a team that played Maryland 3 times, right? And beat them. It was a close game the first couple of times, and Maryland finally got the best of them and went on to win it all last season. So, there's been stretches for IU where when they've lost, it's kind of about showing how they bounce back, from those situations. And this year we've seen it early on, and a lot of fresh faces. I mean, it's never easy when you lose Andrew Gutman from last season, the Matt Kerman Award winner. Trey Muse, a guy who has pretty much been nursed by the Seattle Sounders, and now he's seeing productive minutes up there. And Reese Buckmaster, Timmy Mel, some other guys who have just been so pivotal and important to this program of recent years. They're gone, and now it's time for some new guys to step up, and some of the returnees, the Ian Blacks, the Jordan Kleins in the back line, Jack Mayer again coming back, plenty of expectations, and Sean Caulfield as well stepping in for Trey Muse in his 5th year.
Right. There's so much depth, like I've been saying, and a lot of leadership potential. So you got someone like Ian Black, Jack Mayer, Sean Caulfield, all these guys that we talk to in media availability, and they constantly say, no, you know what, this team is still molding together, they're getting together. These fresh faces, okay, yeah, they're new, they're getting their feet right now in this Big Ten D1 play. It's insane how they're able to really come together. They haven't lost a game yet, you said, and they're ready and willing to bounce back. In the Pitt game, we saw that together. It was insane how they were able to, they weren't playing together in the first half, and then that second half rolls around, that overtime, and they're there. They got it. They're together, and that was only in the first game. So there's a lot of potential, what we can see.
Yeah, another guy we didn't bring up, Herbert Endeley, who scored the game-winning goal, of course, another freshman for this club. He came up big there as well. So, there's a lot of guys coming off the bench, getting minutes, and really, these first couple weeks, it's kind of exploratory for Todd Yeagley. Who's going to be that 14, 15 guys that are going to see a lot of playing time? And, I think as next week progresses, Notre Dame coming up, Wisconsin, the Big Ten opener after that, we'll kind of see some, maybe some solidification, I don't know if that's a word, but some kind of stability, how about that, with this roster?
Oh, yeah, we'll take it. And you touched on it right there, that Notre Dame game coming up and Wisconsin after it. Some huge games. Notre Dame, the first ranked opponent this team's going to face. What does this team need to do to step up, and what should Hoosier fans expect from them?
I want to start with me.
Yeah,
okay,
all right. Right over to you.
So I think, both of these teams really need this game. Notre Dame's at number 10 right now. They're they're just in the top 10. And if they win this, they can work their way up and get deeper into those rankings. And IU needs this because we're talking about like different rankings and they've been kind of shifting around a little bit since the start of the season. They need this to solidify their spot and not move down further. So IU, you're going to see both of these teams going out hard, ready to compete, and just I think especially with the amount of time IU has had, we might see a strong, they've had a lot of time to build between their last game and this Notre Dame game. So we're going to see IU competing at a high level. They're going to look good and they're going to be rested, and Notre Dame's going to become just as hard.
You know, something that kind of really stuck with me that Todd Eagley said a few weeks back. I asked him a question about kind of the ranking, the preseason ranking of the program being so high, starting the year off at number 2, right?
Oh, exactly.
And I said, you know, what do you tell the guys and how to stay focused throughout the year as the season starts? He said, guys, you haven't done anything yet, you know? I mean, this is just kind of an implication and kind of showing what the program has done in the past, you know? It's kind of in a kind of round of applause for the achievements that they've had, right? We're going to give you the number 2 ranking. So really, this year has all been about kind of showing up. I mean, a total turnover in the roster like we've talked about. And now they got Notre Dame, and they had a great game against Denver. Yeah, that was the first ranked matchup of the year. And then Notre Dame, of course, Jack Lynn with 3 goals for the Fighting Irish. He'll be a tough matchup, but I think it'll definitely be a good one. And of course, IU a little familiar with Notre Dame in recent years. Of course, not.
Oh, yeah.
They just went up to South Bend, didn't see him, but in 2017, when they were in their tournament run, they actually played him in a quarterfinal. So a lot of kind of close matchups, and you know we'll talk about all the overtimes in a little bit here, but expect that one to be a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Right, if you're Indiana, you want this win. You need this win. I think, like Maxwell, you were saying, this is a really important game because they haven't had any matches yet that are really to their caliber that they usually are playing at, and the freshmen haven't been able to have one of those games. So going against Notre Dame, securing that win will be really important. And in the past 3 times I think they met Notre Dame, Indiana took away the win. So we'll see, because there is a transition, a change in the people that are on the roster. But our squad and our leadership ability from Yeagley, from captains that have just showed their constant support and constant confidence in what they can do, I don't know what this game is going to bring, but hopefully some good things for Indiana.
Yeah, definitely some huge expectations from both sides of the ball heading into that game. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back after this. We've got more IU men's soccer talk, so don't worry about it. We are coming back. We'll have more soccer news, more soccer content, as well as some predictions from our panelists. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. Now, we've been talking IU men's soccer and their season up to this point, but we've still got more to come, so glad you're still with us. The team started at number 2 this year. Now, they've fallen a little bit. The rankings really in general have just been all over the place. So, Maxwell, I'm going to start with you. As of now, where do you think this team should be ranked?
I mean, I think we've all acknowledged it's early in the season, and I think this Notre Dame game is really going to put that in place. If they can beat this number 10 team, that's going to show that they are in a good spot in that top 10. But if they lose, it's going to show that they need to be lower. I mean, I'm putting a lot on this game. I think Notre Dame, this is going to be a deciding factor for the rankings. I think it's fine right now. It's early. They've shown they have, like you said, they're still undefeated, 3-0-1. I mean, haven't lost the game yet, but I think that this game is going to be the determiner whether they deserve it or not. But right now, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the start of a season always, you kind of never know how things go, especially, I mean, look at Maryland winning last year, starting the year at 3, and they stumbled out of the gate, or 1-2, and they dropped to 24 in the rankings. So, I mean, it's very early on to kind of start really getting a sense of how teams play together, how teams are really going to go throughout the season, of course. But Big Ten play coming up, that should be exciting to see all the talent there. This Notre Dame game, I would say, has some pretty good implications, especially when you look at trying to build a tournament resume. I mean, those non-conference games do matter, and this will be a good one.
Right now, they're still in the top 5. So I think that the rankings are what they should be right now. They haven't played any of those matches that will put them over the top. to that 1 or 2 spot that they had coming into the season. So the Notre Dame game, again, I think that's going to do a lot for Indiana if they're able to secure that win in terms of rankings. But right now, what their ranking is what they deserve for the moment.
Yeah, that Notre Dame's going to be a big one. And honestly, the way the season's gone, as we mentioned, 3-0-1. That's their current record. 3 wins, 1 tie. But, I mean, we very well might see another Notre Dame tie. And if that's the case, I mean, I'm just going to ask you now, what's with all these ties? Max, what is it?
Beats me. I've been at all those games. It's really funny to me because I asked Coach Yeagley about what just happened at halftime in these games because they look a little slow in the first half, and that's when the other team will run it up, and then they just come out firing, and they come out. It must be some halftime speech that's pumping them up. I mean, something's working for them. But I don't know, but hopefully they can kind of figure it out. Or, I mean, fans are getting their money's worth, so I mean, it's providing a lot of entertainment.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a fun period. Jordan, what do you think? Is it the halftime speech?
Side rant, I hate ties, okay? That's my one pet peeve with soccer. And Sundays, I watch the NFL games, and I'm like, all right, we're going to have a winner and a loser. And then Sunday, the Cardinals and Lions tie. I'm like, come
Exactly.
on, you got to be kidding me. But, you know, it's whatever. So in regards to all the ties, I don't know. I mean, I would expect this one. They just play a lot of close games, and it's going to be like this all year. But good teams find a way to win, and that's something that IU does. I mean, they got some of the veterans. We talked about how young they are, but I mean, Spencer Glass, a guy we haven't mentioned yet, AJ Palazzo, some big contributors off the bench last year for Indiana. They'll definitely help in those close games, and of course, Mayer and Caulfield being the 2 team captains. There's definitely some leadership to kind of guide them through these close games, and eventually, kind of hopefully, coming out on top.
Right, they've had a week off so far, so I'm sure in practice and the out-of-game play, they're going to be talking a little bit how to pick up the intensity towards the beginning of the games. Because, like we say, they always start to pick it up at the second half afterwards, and that's not good enough. That's not enough time for them to be able to pick up the win, pick up the pace, and get the momentum going. And for these freshmen, I think, because there's so many new faces, that's part of the reason that they're taking so long to really mold together and form. They didn't have much of a preseason to be able to get them in. This is kind of serving as preseason before what's really going to happen for Indiana. So I think it'll be interesting to see coming into Notre Dame.
You know, in that Pittsburgh game, when they went down 2-0 so early on, I was almost thinking to myself, man, I don't know if they're going to have enough time to come back. But, you know, you saw how quickly in the second half they just turned it on.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's something with Indiana soccer they've been able to do successfully over the last couple of seasons, just their ability to kind of turn it on at any point, and scoring can come from anywhere. I mean, defense, offense, midfield, wherever it is. I mean, they've found the back of the net.
Maybe moving that halftime speech up to the start of the game maybe will solve that problem.
Okay, I see. So you've got your own strategies. We'll get you in touch with Yeagley and see if you can figure that out. But Jordan, I know you just mentioned it with and tomorrow as well with all these like new players coming in, the kickstart from the players. I'm going to start asking you to make some predictions now. Tomorrow I'm going to start with you, and we're going around the horn. By the end of the year, who are we going to be saying is the IU men's soccer player of the year? Who actually emerges from this pack?
I gotta say, Jack Mayer, he is the only sophomore on the Mac Herman Trophy watch list. Come on.
That's incredible.
And he just constantly performs. He got his first goal already in the season, this early in the season as a defender. He's always, what I like about Jack, we always see media availability, is his ability to be a leader. He is so good at what he does, and also getting that team together. I wish that other people could see on outside what he's like and what he contributes to the game, but he's a really solid player and a really good leader for this new of a team.
And he carries himself like Andrew Luck, but you know, you hope his career, hopefully he's not retiring anytime soon. That's the one part. I mean, that would be a total whirlwind in the season.
Sophomore in college is a little earlier than 30-year-old and several injuries later, but you never know with sports.
Jack's a great interview, but you know, I think at the end of the year, we'll go to Maxwell.
Tamar had mine. I was going to say Mayer. I like Mayer. I mean, besides the leadership, which I was going to touch on, but you covered that perfectly. I think that just he had that goal this season, and just he's had some good looks in the games, and I think he's looking good on both sides of the ball, and on top of that leadership ability, I think he's just going to be a key contributor to this team.
All right, I blanked on the questions. Ian Black is my answer.
Okay, there we go.
I had a brain fart. So Ian Black, 3 goals on the year already. I mean, none going into this season. So, I mean, he's definitely been a guy really that Todd Yeagley's had to rely on this year. I mean, he's been fantastic. And Jack Mayer, of course, and the defensive line. But another guy who's really getting some productive minutes early on, Simon Waver, the transfer from Evansville, who's really just come in and just fit right into this team and kind of provided that leadership and, you know, having the experience playing at the Division I level to kind of guide these freshmen starting, such as Aiden Morris, among others.
And so we'll go back to the predictions real quick, but first I want to ask more of a basis question. This team lost in the national semifinals last year. Obviously a completely different team, but do you think that this team still is at that caliber? Do you think this is still a team that down the line we could be talking about a championship? Max, this question is for you. I'm going to clarify.
One's for me. Okay.
Yes.
So I don't want to keep saying the same thing, but it is early in the season. That's just my only thing. But I am optimistic. This team is ranked high, and they've the ability we talked about, the ability to score. They're coming back in a shorter amount of time in that second half, and they're able to capitalize on opportunities and score. And I think that that's something to keep in mind as we move forward. But I think that I'm optimistic about them. I think that the way these freshmen have been playing, like Aiden Morris, like we talked about, they're just looking great. They're stepping up, and I think I'm optimistic. But I'm thinking there's a shot they can go pretty far this year.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Todd Yeagley as your head coach, especially at this point in his career, I mean, his ability to do something with the roster, it's kind of like you have Greg Popovich at the helm. I mean, you're expected to make the playoffs, you know, go far. I mean, it's very similar with Todd Yeagley in college soccer. I mean, his ability to just coach, teach the young guys, and, you know, making it to Philadelphia 2 years ago, Santa Barbara last year. I think they make it to Cary again this year, a three-peat perhaps. I don't know if they'll take it all, but I think that this team are already showing the progression this early on. You know, playing these close games is definitely going to help them down the road, especially against the high competition they faced. So, you know, I think I can see this team going far.
There's the pressure, like you're saying, like the pressure involved in that too shows that this team can perform in high-stakes situations.
Oh yeah, Todd Yeagley loves that. I mean, he loves this kind of atmosphere and game scenarios.
And what he's doing is perfectly fine. I don't have any problems with it.
Oh, okay. You
Just
don't
to
need
clarify.
you don't need to throw your own advice in there again this time.
It's working great.
I see how it is. Now, Tamara, what level caliber is this team at?
Genuinely, I don't know, because there's so much depth. Like I've been saying, there's so many leaders on this team, but at the same time, they're so new that I don't think I can say yet. This is just a completely different team. They have 14 new guys on their squad, so just to really see what they can do together, I don't think we've been able to see enough games of high caliber that we can tell what this team is going to bring.
And so with that, we're going to wrap up the show with one last prediction. Tamar, you left your last answer on a big question mark, so naturally I just got to drill you on it this time. What is the last game this team plays? How far do they go, and where does this team end?
Now, I think they're going to go far in the Big Ten. In the Big Ten games, I don't quite know. I still am stuck. I think that they could possibly go into the College Cup. I'll be optimistic for them for that one. But still, I can't really say.
You know, for me, it's much easier to say IU men's soccer makes the College Cup than in recent years I've been able to confidently say IU basketball is going to make the tournament, IU football is going to make a bowl game. IU men's soccer, I feel okay saying they're going to make a College Cup. I mean, I know it's 4 teams get in the 64-team field, but, you know, I really believe in this team. With a guy like Todd Yeagley, like I was saying, at the helm, Danny O'Rourke, another guy on the staff who, you know, won the Mac Herman Trophy of his own at Indiana in the 2000s. I mean, with the coaching experience on this team, I mean, the sky's the limit for Indiana.
I'm with Jordan on this one. I think I'm kind of in between you guys. I think it is early. I'm not going to put a definite answer on this, but I think that they can make. The Big Ten is going to be a good competition. I think they're going to make it deep in that. But with the College Cup, I think, like you said, with these other teams, you're not as sure if you can say they can make it, but I feel the same way. I think that they have a pretty good shot at making that College Cup.
Okay, so I see Jordan's a little more like outwardly optimistic, Tamara a little more reserved, and Max, you're just
right in the middle.
Hanging out in the middle. I like it.
Kind of dangerous for me to be optimistic as an Indiana fan.
That's perfectly fair, but you know, you got to open up yourself to getting hurt sometimes, right? On that bright note, that does it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions that you might have. So toss it up, find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.